Всем привет! Сейчас я в своей московской квартире. У меня много новостей о моей поездке в Россию. Я купил новую машину, а я сдал операцию. Да, я был в больнице 5 дней. Сейчас все хорошо. Я, мне удали женичий пузыри. Хм, Трудное слово. Пузыри. Буква «ы» — это очень трудная буква. Ну, все хорошо. Ам, ам, я не могу ел мясо, курицы хорошо. Ам, Все хорошо. Я могу пить кофе и капучино. Если я могу э, пить кофе, все хорошо. Но я не могу пить алкоголь. А, а, 1 месяц, может быть, 3 месяца, может быть, много времени. Моя жена сказала, мне нужно жить без алкоголя. Конечно, она сказала. Но мы посмотрим. Okay, everyone, hello. I'm here in my Moscow apartment, and I have a lot of news about my trip in Russia. I bought a new car. I went to the hospital. I was there for 5 days. I had my gallbladder removed. Everything's fine now. I just can't eat meat. I can eat chicken. I can drink coffee, cappuccino. I can't have alcohol for at least 1 to 3 months. My wife, of course, says I just need to learn to live without it. But of course, that's what all wives say. So we shall see. For those of you who do speak Russian, I apologize if my Russian is bad. Some of the words are very hard. Gallbladder was a new word for me. I had to learn it, and it's zhelichny. Yeah, that's and the word that comes after that, bladder, sounds very much like another word in the English vocabulary for a woman's anatomy. So it was really difficult to say because of course, the hardest letter for Americans to say. "Ü." So that one is hard. And if you're ever curious, there's many videos about it. It is the hardest one to learn. My wife always says it's the one that tells you if you're a spy or not. Because if you can't pronounce that, you're definitely not native Russian. So I'm here. I'm here for a little while longer. I've been here for 6 months. Я был в Россию 6 месяцев. I got here in June and I'm leaving in December. So I've accomplished a lot. Thank goodness I did what I needed to do. I got my residency permit, which is essentially like a green card, but they have 2 stages of green card. You get a temporary one, then a permanent one. Temporary is good for 3 years, permanent's 5 years, and a permanent can be extended every 5 years forever. The temporary is only good for 3 years. It's a one-shot deal. You can have it for 3, and then you have to get your permanent within that 3 years. And if you don't, it goes away. And from what I understand, you can never ask for it again. So it's like a one-shot deal. There are other ways to get your permanent, buying property in Moscow or other regions, but it's like $500,000 in Moscow you have to spend, or 250,000 in other cities, which is just in other cities $250,000 for a property is crazy. That they exist, but there's not very many of them. For example, in Lipetsk, just for fun, I looked for a property that was over 300,000 residential, and just not that many, like 2. It's just it doesn't exist. Now you get some homes, there's some mansions, but for the most part, the average day common person's apartment specifically, there's only 2 apartments in all of Lipetsk over 300. So that's the topic we're going to talk about: my operation, my car, lots. So stay tuned. Right now, I have a technician here who's working on my windows. I'm on the 14th floor, and when it rains really bad, the water seeps in. So he's here doing some silicone because the rubber uh, trim just is horrible. You know, same in America, builder grade quality sucks. But unfortunately, the exterior windows, I'm not allowed to do anything to. I can't maintenance them. I can't replace them. I can do nothing. So I'm kind of stuck. Um, I was trying to figure out a way to make interior windows just on the inside of the exterior windows. I know that sounds silly, but then I can at least not worry about water coming in or it's cold. So I'm kind of stuck with the cheap. It's not single pane glass, but it sucks. Um, now that's just my balcony. It's not my actual windows to my apartment. The windows to my apartment, I can change those to a certain degree, but I can't do the balcony ones. It is what it is. So I'm doing that. So if the guy hollers, I have to leave. Right now, so let's talk about my news. What news do I have? Well, I don't want to go over my entire trip. 6 months of one video is a long time. So I wanted to talk about just my operation, maybe talk about what I did, why I did it, and the big differences between having an operation in Russia versus the US, which are a lot. So let's talk about that. I'll talk maybe in another video about my new car. I bought a Lada. I know a lot of people laugh. The Russians laugh the hardest. Well, the Russians here laugh, but the Russians who live in America laugh the hardest. Okay, Ukrainians laugh even harder. Uh, but they all laugh, which is okay. But I bought a Niva. So I didn't buy a Granta or something like that. Which are okay. And for those of you who don't know, Lada is the one of the car brands in Russia. I don't know every single thing about it. About them. I just know with sanctions and everything, it's the car market here is just insane. The prices are astronomical, but there's almost every car you can think of here. The most popular ones are probably Kia. I would say the number one most popular would be a Kia, and Hyundai, similarly popular. The biggest problem are sanctions, but this is a free message to the U.S. China's taken over the new car market here in Russia. When I got here just 6 months ago, it was about 20%. Well, last year, I'd say last 1 year ago, it was about 20% when I was started looking for my first car. I bought a Duster, Renault Duster, which is very similar to the Nissan Rogue. The Rogue's fancier, I would say. The Duster's the cheaper version of the same. But I bought that, and at that time the Chinese market was about 20%. It is now almost 40% of the new car sales, and they're really nice. Of course, they're all stolen IPs or intellectual properties from the US and around the world. You walk up to a car like, oh, that's a cool Lexus. You get closer, like, that's not a Lexus. What is that? It's Chinese. There are 23 Chinese car manufacturers that sell product in Russia, if that gives you a clue. That's right, 23 car manufacturers. I don't want to make this about a Chinese car products in Russia, but they're pretty nice, and they're relatively much cheaper than any other cars. Now, you can get some expensive ones. Havel is one of the nicer ones, and Havel has one that looks just like the Lexus, 460. I think they've got 3 or 4 different models, and each one's based upon size. The cheapest one is probably around 30 or a little less than 30, and the most expensive is 40 something thousand, which is just crazy prices for Russia. However, if you wanted any kind of Toyota right now, they're 60 to 100,000 US dollars. If you can find any that are still new, and Manchester, they're gone. There's no more new ones around. Last year when I was looking, there were still a handful of new ones around, and a Toyota Oh, what was I looking at? Just for fun, I was not gonna buy it. Oh boy, I can't think the not Forerunner. Those are called Pradas here. Well, they have the new Forerunner has a new name, and they I have seen some of those, but I can't think of the Toyota, the RAV4. So they still had a couple new Toyota RAV4s last December when I bought my Nissan, or my sorry Renault, and they were about, if I remember, 50 to 60,000. One was 70,000 U.S. dollars for a 36 to 45,000 dollar car. It was insane. Now they're you just can't find any new because they've all been sold. The used ones are insanely priced. That's why I was very excited last year in December, and that's why I bought it. I bought my Nissan, sorry, Renault Duster. It had 3,000 kilometers on it. And I paid 1.9 million rubles, which at the time the ruble was not as good as it is now. So I still pay in the high 20s. Right now it would be like 20,000, very cheap. But that's because of the ruble. You can't really, that's like a separate ball game when you start talking about the exchange. But um, I bought it at a good price. Now, when you can't find one with that, it was 2022. Right now, you can't find one with that low mileage or kilometers, and if you do, it's same price. I found one, a couple, same year, same price. I'm sorry, same mileage. I'm sorry, I found one, same year model, with 60 to 80,000 kilometers for the same price I paid, between 1.7 to 2 million rubles. So I am so glad I got it, and been driving from Moscow to Lipetsk and back and forth. So now I've got quite a bit of kilometers. Well, I got 12,000 kilometers, but I drive that more than I do in America because I'm here 6 months out of the year. So I bought the Niva, brand new. It's a lot of Niva, and not just Niva. Niva, if you don't know, is a little 4x4. It's a real small car. It's been the same car since 1977. They've made some changes on the interior, but it's for the same car. Same engine, same transmission. It's the same car, same suspension since 1977. That's why I bought it. And we live in a village, and it's my Duster's 4x4, but I wanted something like really bad snow or early in the spring is real muddy. So, like when I first came here early in the year, what was I here? March, February, I forget when I first came. I had to wait to get my car. It was still, the mud was so thick and everything, I couldn't get it out of my garage. We hadn't finished our driveway yet. It's still dirt, and I had to wait a couple weeks for it to dry up a little before I could get my car out. That's how bad it was. Well, we need to put pavement down and stuff, but the road stops a couple doors down from my house. So even the road's bad. In fact, we had a delivery in November. We had a refrigerator, all of our appliances were delivered, and we're just putting them in our garage for now to our houses. Get the floor down and stuff inside, and the delivery truck had to stop a house away from us. Couldn't come down the road anymore. It was too muddy. It's so funny. He waited until the first frost and waited for the snow to come so he could actually drive down the rest of the road. That's how bad it was. So when you hear stories about the fighting that's going on in Ukraine with Russia, and people talk about why our U.S. Abrams tanks had to be rebuilt before we could even send them to Ukraine because they were too heavy, it absolutely true. It's kind of a double cross sword. I mean, it's really bad. Um, because the ground is so soft, the dirt is so soft. There's not a lot of clay in it like in the U.S., but it's good because that's why the crops grow so well. That's why people make fun of it. They say you could grow a tire in the soil. It's very, very soft, and that's why the carrots are bigger, and there's less resistance, of course, and all that. But at least that's what they tell me. But all I know is it's muddy, very muddy. So anyways, So I got the car, and I didn't buy just a Niva. I bought a Niva Bronto, and a Niva Bronto is kind of like a Maybach, or a Shelby, or a Mercedes does another one for its G wagon. So the company buys them. Well, it's sold at the Lotto dealership, authorized from Lotto. They take it and they make adjustments and sell them with their badge on it. And it's not cheap for Russians. It's not cheap at all. I paid like 1.4 million rubles, and everyone who knows Lotto would just laugh at me for that. You can so 1 year ago, I'd say 2 years. 2 years ago, you can buy a new one of those for about 8 million, maybe. Now, brand new, 8 million, 800,000. Um, Last year, they creeped up to about 900 to a million. Now they're at a million rubles. The Bronto's 1.4 million. And a lot of people would just laugh. Why would you take a million ruble car and add crap to it and make it more expensive? It's because it's what I wanted, and we needed two cars. When the weather's bad, I'll drive that, and I won't drive that to Moscow. It's not the most comfortable car. I have a '68 Volkswagen Beetle convertible, cabriolet, as the Russians call it, back in the U.S., and this car reminds me a lot of the Beetle. When I got inside, I was like, "This feels like my Beetle." It really does. It's old technology, uh, but it's good. Everything's mechanical. That's not true. There's something digital in the dash, I forget, but it's mostly mechanical. Now mine's got a souped up suspension. It's got the differential locks. It's a fun car. It's a toy. So I got that. Of course, Natasha and I went to my wife and I went to Altai. We went to a sanatorium for a month. That was fun. Climbed a mountain, did all that fun stuff. Working on our house, of course. And then I had my surgery, which is really what I wanted to talk about now, was my surgery. So I had my gallbladder removed. It's been a problem probably for 20 years, but when I first got here in June, I started having some serious problems, and I would drink a little bit of alcohol, and I was like, why do I have like a hangover? Like I just drink a fifth of alcohol. It was bad. So every time I would drink, I was thinking it was the alcohol. So every time I drink, I got really sick. I'm like, okay, what's going on? But what I also wasn't taking into consideration was I had a big old steak or a hamburger or something before I drank the alcohol. So I stopped drinking like at all for like over a month, and it didn't change anything. So I was very happy it wasn't the alcohol. And then I went to Altai, and when I was in Altai, I could do a whole video on sanatoriums and how they work in Russia. But when you get there, they you meet a doctor, talk about your ailments. For me, it was my stomach, so they did an ultrasound, they did blood tests, uh, and they were real close to an MRI, but we didn't do that. That's more for muscle, skeletal stuff. But they realized real quick that I had gallstones, which I've had problems with that for 20 plus years, but apparently I had a really large one, and about half the size of your thumb, and it was pretty big. Um, and so I did a lot of diet stuff there that's supposed to help it, and realizing I can't eat fat, uh, which is 90% of my diet. And long story short, we had a local doctor friend. Uh, we sent him the information from the ultrasound, and he said it's got to go. And he was shocked that I still had it. Talked about when I got sick once or twice, and he said that's crazy. He says you should have went to the ER when you got that sick. I don't know. So, anyways, so I went to Lipetsk, and did the surgery, and that was an event. It was good. I don't regret it for sure, but first of all, it was my first surgery ever. I never had a surgery in my entire life. I broke my ankle once, broke my collarbone when I was a kid, and that's pretty much it. Never really had a surgery, so this is the first time. So, so our doctor friend, who's actually a classmate of my stepson's, he did a year and a half of high school in Lipetsk, and this was one of his classmates. Really tall guy. Everyone calls him Biggie. Pasha is his name. So we made an appointment with him in Lipetsk, and he did he's a surgeon, but general surgeon. But he now he wasn't. No, he was. He are surgeon. Anyways, then he switched to being a I don't know, a stomach doctor. And so we did tests, did a upper GI, camera down my throat. That was so much fun, let me tell you. Did that and some other tests and another ultrasound, all that, and just came to the conclusion that the stone was not going to be broken up in any way. It was pretty large, like I said, about half the size of my thumb. Actually, when I say that, about the size of in fact, when they gave it to me after surgery, kind of funny, they put it on my chest and wheeled me out of the surgery. It's another story. About the size of it didn't even look like a Hall's cough drop. That's about the size of it. So I did, signed up to do the surgery, and here in Russia, they have, like many places. Well, let me stop here. Let me give you this caveat. One, as I said before, I've never had a surgery before, so I'm going to tell you my experiences of my surgery. I really can't compare it to the U.S. because I've never had a surgery. I can tell you what I do know based upon what nurses I know, and my ex used to be a cardiothoracic step-down nurse, which is like right after heart surgery. So I know some of basic surgeries. My friend Richard is a surgical tech. He told me some things. I mean, just basic stuff. And I think a lot of people had their gallbladder removed. This isn't a very big procedure. So when I tell you all this is my experience. I'm not a doctor. I don't fully understand the medical system in Russia. I don't fully understand the medical system in the U.S. other than it costs crazy amounts of money and the insurance is in charge and the doctors make a lot of money. It's what I know. Everything's money driven. What I do know about Russia, it is not all money driven. Money is obviously a big part of it, but it is not the deciding factor in everything that they do at all. It does affect things, but it's not the deciding factor. So I have my temporary residency permit, or like the equivalent of a green card, and it actually allows me to receive government benefits, which includes free medical care. So Russia has free medical care, and then they have the pay system, which is very interesting. They call it bezplatia, which means without pay, which is kind of weird because it means you pay. I'm sure it's got something to do with that the government doesn't pay, so that means I pay, but I qualified for it. But Natasha and I, a long time ago, Natasha gets medical treatment here as well. I have for the last 5 years of my life. I haven't seen a doctor in the U.S. for a very long time. Last time I saw a doctor was because of this a long time ago. And she retired. Kept coming here for medical treatment. But we made the decision we were going to pay no matter what, just because we can afford it. It's not very expensive, and we did not want to take away the services from the Russian people. Don't think it's very honest to do. So we were very happy to pay. I would have paid 10 times the amount that they charged me, to be quite honest. So things are different here. You have to do a lot of the work yourself. Some of the things are better, some of the things are worse. But in order to have surgery, just like in the U.S., and I knew this from my practice of being an attorney. I mean, I've been involved in some medical malpractice suits, some pretty severe ones, some minor ones. But I know the protocol that you have to do, the due diligence you have to do before surgery, the test, even for something so minor, you have to have so many tests done beforehand. Well, here in Russia, they're not all done at the same place by the same hospital, clinic, or doctors or doctor. There's a long list of things you have to do. To give you an example, first you got to go and meet the doctor. We already had our doctor, but the way it works is it's almost like going to the DMV. So you go in, you get a number, and you sit and you wait, and that's just the clerk to get you into the system to see who you want. So you go in, you take your number, you sit, and it was working pretty fast. So you go in, you sit. What do you want? I want to meet a doctor, a consult. Okay, well, we already know the guy. He's wants us. We just got to do it. Okay. Then they go through, do you qualify? How do you want to do it? And we're like, this, but we want to pay. You're like, okay. So they set an appointment with the doctor. And we already knew, we kind of knew pre-hand we were going to meet him. He said, I'll be at work about 9. Let's go there, make an appointment with me. So we did, made an appointment with him. And then he made an appointment with the specialist. Well, he made a referral to meet the specialist. So then we had to go and make the appointment with the specialist. And then we met with the specialist, and then the specialist did some basic examinations, made his determination, ordered some preliminary tests, and ordered an ultrasound, that to really see what was going on. Did that. Once we did that, it's like, okay, refer you to the specific surgeon. So we saw the specific surgeon. Surgeon ordered all of the tests and said, okay, we'll come back after the tests are done. That process is like almost 2 weeks. So got to get a ultrasound, which we did. You have to have EKG or some version of it. Had to have blood work, 3 different blood works. I don't know if one said you needed another. I don't know why, but needed blood work, 3 different levels of blood work, blood panels, 3 different times. But the good news is all 3 of those were done in the same building, 3 different dates. And then I had to have a dental exam. I'm assuming just to make sure I had no infections in my mouth. So I don't know, it was like 5 minutes. We did that in our village. There's a couple I'm forgetting. But it took several trips, several visits, about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks to do what I just told you. Not that you can't just go there and see all the doctors. You have to make an appointment to go to a different one. And a lot of them, you had to wait for the results of one to do the other. I had an upper GI, I had that. Stick the camera down your throat. I did that. And luckily I have a car, so I don't have to take a bus to all these places. That would be, you just add double the time to do it. But they have a great bus system in Lipetsk. So week and a half I did all that. And then decided, obviously, we are going to do the surgery, so set me up. And as I'm doing all these tests, I'm in the same place, walking down the surgical room, and I'm like, there's 6 people to a room here. Now, they're gender separated, but there's 6 people of all ages, most of them elderly, of course. 6 people to a room. The beds aren't very big. I'm like, okay, this looks like something out of 1950s. Bathrooms are in the hallway, so they're private, but private as in one person at a time, but they're shared by people all over the floor. Now, I will tell you, it's very clean. Looks like a normal hospital in the U.S. Not a fancy one, but it looks like a government hospital, like you would think a VA hospital probably used to look like maybe about 10 years ago. But it was very, very clean. And I was just worried about sharing a room with 6 people for 5 days that I don't know, don't want to know, don't know me, don't want to know me. And they laughed and they said, "Oh, no. If you're Besplatia, if you pay, you get your own private room." I'm like, "Oh, thank goodness." So I did, and my Russian is okay. If the person I'm communicating with has patience, we can get through conversations. I had several conversations where my wife wasn't allowed on the floor with the doctors, and we did fine. My main doctor, a surgical doctor, he didn't do the surgery, but he's in charge of the whole process, pre and post surgery on the floor stuff. The resident doctor, he used a translator a couple times, but I could have understood what he was telling me, but some of it was very specific. He did not want to not tell me. So other than that, like the cleaning ladies, the nurses, I just understood. I need your temperature. It's basic stuff that I can understand. I mean, I've got the grammatics right and understood the grammatics, but I understood that she needs my temperature. It's not hard. She came with medicine, shots. I get it. The cleaning lady came. It's not hard. Food lady understood. First time it was a little difficult figuring out what she was trying to tell me, but I figured it out. There's some things that people just know that I don't know. It was interesting. But before I get there, so in general, They take me to the room and kind of put me in a room and say, wait, okay, how long? Don't know. Nobody knows. So I get to the room like at 10 in the morning. My surgery didn't happen until like 2. I'm just like, okay. So I get to the room and it's a very nice room. It had a couch. It reminded me of a hospital room for a maternity room, to where it had the bed, had its own private bath with a shower, very nice, tile floor, tile walls, very nice, and then had a couch that made into a bed, which I didn't use, of course. It had table and chairs, it had a refrigerator, microwave, a teapot, a closet. It was very nice and just for me. Uh, and my hunch is no one even knew that room existed. The other patients, thank goodness, they probably wouldn't have been very happy with me. And you just kind of walk around on the floor. There's nothing to do, of course. They had a TV, but it didn't really work. I didn't really try, which is fine. Um, and then I had my meals brought to me, and they had dishes and everything there, which I thought was weird in the closet. I'm like, okay, don't understand this. So that's a different story. So I get there, and eventually, about an hour before the surgery, they come tell me and to get naked, basically. And I shaved myself the day before for the surgery on my chest and my stomach and all that area. So I did that and just kind of laid there waiting for him. It was very, very interesting because it's not that it was in Russia, and a lot of my American friends are like, what the hell's wrong with you? Why would you do that in Russia? My fear wasn't about Russia. My fear was just surgery. I never had it at all. So um, it was a little nervous, but I was fine with it. I felt like I was in good hands. But and I knew one of the doctors, and I know this may sound arrogant, but being an American there, not that it gives me clout, but the last thing they want to do is screw up on an American. So they're not going to give me subpar care, not at all. No, was everything there as nice and as fancy as U.S.? No, not at all. But it's okay. Not every hospital in the U.S. looks the same, but as my wife says, the care there is wonderful. ER care is probably not as wonderful. The ambulance system is horrible. It takes 5 times as long to get to the hospital as you would in the U.S., but she thinks that by and far the system is better. I tend to start to agree with her, just because the system, maybe because it's had so many years of not being as good as Western medicine. A lot is preventative medicine, so I do see a lot of preventative medicine. Now, being an attorney, I see something totally different than most people even see what's going on. They may see the effects of it, but I see something that's a little different that I want to talk about next. Um, I'm waiting in the room, waiting for my surgery. I have not quite a complete grasp on what's going to happen. I really have no idea. So again, first surgery ever. So I go in to the um, surgery room. I'm laying on this gurney completely naked with the blanket over me. And all I can see is, of course, the lights. So they're wheeling me around. I mean, I walked to my room, of course, so I kind of knew where I was a little bit, but uh, they wheeled me into the surgery room and literally told me to scoot up to the surgical bed, which I did. And it was not quite what most surgical rooms look like in the U.S. There wasn't as much equipment. It looks like this one was special, especially for this type of surgery. With I forget what they call orthoscopic. I mean, it wasn't there wasn't like a ventilator. I mean, there wasn't all those kind of machines there. You could tell it was a very typical routine surgery. But nonetheless, anesthesiologist was there, a nurse. I honestly don't know if I don't remember seeing the doctor at all. Uh, Unless the anesthesiologist was the doctor, which I don't. No, let me back that up. No, I know it wasn't, because I had to have a special consultation with the anesthesiologist before the surgery. He did his own examination and stuff, which is weird. So I did all that, and uh, the whole they gave me put the IV in, and then they did the anesthesia, which to me was uh, weird. I didn't like it. Didn't like it at all. Now I had a gallbladder attack like 15 years ago, and I got morphine for the first time, and that morphine wasn't bad. I could say that you feel the euphoria, you feel the warmth, you can actually feel the medicine be administered, and kind of felt it. Whatever this was, I don't know what it was, but I was excited at this point. Not excited. I was. It's like let me close my eyes and open it and have the surgery done. And I also have to start off by telling you that I have a very low threshold for pain. I don't think I'm considered a wimp or anything, but when it comes to personal pain, I'm a big wimp. I don't like it. So it felt like someone was sitting on my eyelids or just yanking them down. I wasn't trying to fight it. I was just kind of blinking my eyes, kind of anticipating it, and my eyes just felt so heavy, not as in when you're tired, just like someone's forcing your eyes shut. It was very weird for me. So that happened. Okay, that's fine. No big deal. That was done. I open him up, and he's tapping my head to wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. And as soon as I opened my eyes, I felt the pain in my chest like I have never felt before. It was like someone had just stabbed me and left the knife in and was turning it. Not that I know what that feels like, but I have a little bit of an idea now. And that hurt really bad. So they scoot the hospital bed over and literally kind of say, lift, scoot over. And I couldn't even repeat in Russian what they said to me, but I understood clearly what they wanted me to do. So I scooted over in the bed and they wheeled me to my room and just let me sit there. And they came, right? Not, the doctor came, a different doctor came and talked to me and told me, sleep. Today, no liquids, no nothing. I mean, they fed me something intravenously, so I had some kind of nutrients. But today, no liquids, no eating, no nothing, just sleep. So I slept. The next day, I woke up, felt pretty good. And they were giving me a shot on my behind every, what I'd say, I don't know if it was 3 times the first day or just, no, twice the first day, and then just morning and evening, just pain medication. I don't know what it was. I didn't have an IV anymore at this point. And uh, so I just slept. And then the second day, he said liquids only. And it was just water. That was it. Nothing. No tea, no nothing. Just water, and that was it. And then the third day, I could eat anything. Well, anything is whatever they're gonna bring me. I mean, I was pretty much a prisoner. Whatever they brought me, I ate. Uh, and they brought and that was a whole nother venture. And then that's what I ate for the third, the fourth, and the fifth day. And it's 3 meals a day. And doctors would come check on me. Nurse would check on me. I don't know how often, but they would check on me. Take my temperature. It's pretty much all they ever did. Never took my vital signs. Just my temperature. And then, of course, on the third day, I caught a really bad cold. I started shivering and sweating and going through all that normal stuff. And they came and took my temperature and had a fever. It was, I forget, in Celsius. I forget, but it was high, not crazy high, but clearly I had cold. And the doctor came and checked me out. And he said, "You just have the normal hospital cold." Like, well, that didn't make me feel good, but well, everybody's there sick of something, I guess. So while I was there, I just watched a lot of YouTube. I thought I would have since I had a lot of time, I thought I would have a lot of time to do some videos, to do some language work, to do some regular work, but I was too tired, too sore. Well, the first day I was sore. After that, I wasn't sore. I was sore every time I got up. Just pressure on it, but I just didn't feel like doing anything. And then I got sick. I didn't feel like doing anything. So like a waste of 5 days of recovering, which is good, I guess. I got A lot of people don't have 5 days to recover. And back in the U.S., as a comparison, they would send you home that day. It's my understanding you would stay for a couple hours in the hospital, make sure you had no reactions to anything, and then they would just send you on your way. Um, I couldn't imagine doing a car ride after that. It would have been very painful. And what I really couldn't imagine is making your spouse or family member take care of you for at least the next day. I could get up and go to the bathroom, but I didn't feel like getting up doing anything. It was not. I just couldn't imagine that being at home. It would have been pretty miserable. It would have been comfortable to be at home, of course, but I think it would have been miserable. I'm very happy. At least there I was by myself. I could just handle it all by myself. They fed me. That's it. They make sure I wasn't dying, no infections. It was fine. And then I said, "You can go home today," and so I got dressed and left. My wife was downstairs, and that was it. Uh, Scheduled a follow up meeting the next day, and they said, "Oh, no, no, you can come back in 3 months. If there's no problem, there's no reason for you to come back. Just see your regular doctor, and you'll be fine." So I called my regular doctor, and he made me send him photos every day of my wounds. There's like 4 puncture holes and a pretty big incision in my chest. He made me send photos, and he said everything looks fine. And that's it. It's good. Now, the comparison I was going to make earlier that I alluded to was uh, Russia does a lot of preventative healthcare, and it's, I think, because of years of just it's much safer for you to take make sure you don't get sick instead of the U.S., who I think has the opposite mentality. You get sick and they take care of it. Um, it's a different system. I don't understand both to be honest. I know money is driven. An American system tries to have the best outcome at the least amount of, I don't want to say cost because they like it when it costs. Um, but it's just a different system. So let's talk about the comparative, what I know about the two systems. Number one, I understand some of the basic costs in the U.S. I know it was a long time ago when I used to have information about hospitals and things that one stay in a normal hospital, a hospital room, an admitted room, not an ER, anything like that, one night is a minimum of $10,000. That's just for the bed, you in the room. Uh, I think that includes food. Pretty sure it includes food, but of course it doesn't include the doctor. It doesn't include your specialty if you're there for, I don't know, some special treatment and that doctor wants to come visit you. That's between you and that doctor, and whatever arrangement that doctor has with the hospital is between the hospital and that doctor. But that doctor's going to bill you. Of course, and the hospital's going to bill you for the room. And then if you have any lab work done, the laboratory's going to bill you for the lab work. The pharmacy's going to bill you for the pharmacy stuff. I believe the food services are included in the room, um, but that's it. So I know just the room is 10,000. That doesn't count all these other things that I've mentioned. So one night stay, and of course not the surgery itself. And so it's just being in the room, and I was in mine for 5 days. So that would be at least 50,000 US dollars. Then, of course, the surgery itself. And I know talking to my ex brother in law, who's a cardiothoracic surgeon, he said the minimum cost for the minimum surgery was 10,000. Again, that's the doctor doing the surgery. That's not the room, the surgical room. That's not the recovery room. Just the doctor doing the procedure was 10,000. This procedure I had was, I understand, it's pretty basic. They just poke holes and you blow up your belly, cut, take out. From my understanding, it's not a complicated surgery at all. Uh, but nonetheless, it's surgery. So all of that. And in reality, I could have left on day 3, but my wife's like, just we were staying at an Airbnb, equivalent of an Airbnb, someone else's place, and we didn't. Our home isn't ready at this stage. We can't stay there, um, so we've been staying at rentals and stuff. And she knew in advance that was not going to be a good idea. So she called and said, "Okay, so well," I said, "I can go home on the 3rd day." And she called and said, "Can you keep in 2 more days?" Which is a good option to have. Could you imagine that in a hospital? Okay, your surgery went well. We're going to send you home today. And your spouse says, "Can you keep in 2 more days?" I don't think that's ever happened in the U.S. And they said, "Sure, we're fine." It was about, oh, I don't know if I want to tell you. It was about $17 a day is what I paid to use the room for. So all of the, let's talk costs, all of the tests that I did, the surgery, the recovery, everything start to finish was about 700 US dollars. $700. Now in the US, that probably would have been your laboratory bill or your pharmacy bill. I mean, it would have been the cheapest thing possible would have been what this entire process cost. Um, Now, I talked earlier about I have some legal experience, and most people do. I mean, it's not, you don't have to have legal experience to know this, but I have some legal insight as to why the medical care is different in Russia than it is in the US, and why the cost is different. We all know, number one, the cost is different because of insurance. It's just whatever uh, setup the hospitals have with the insurance companies. We all know is just robbery. Do things really cost that much? Well, they do when you come in with expectations of certain profit margins. You have to Things have to cost X to get a certain profit margin. Insurance companies are no different. Um, what's really different before you get there is just the way doctors become doctors, and not how, but why doctors become doctors, in just doctors in general here versus the West. Let's start with the basics. I think the basics are not many doctors become doctors in Russia, especially surgeons. They don't become surgeons once they are doctors because of the money or the great lifestyle. It's their motivation is entirely different. And I know this from at least all the doctors I know. The My wife's got relatives in Ulyanovsk, a family of doctors. The father is a regular doctor and also specialist in ultrasounds. Now, that's also a difference in Russia than in the U.S. Most of the technicians that we have in the U.S. are MD doctors. In Russia, your ultrasound technician is an MD. Like well, chiropractors, but they're regular MDs. They're all MDs, which basic level MDs. They may or may not have anything beyond an MD other than their expertise. But anyways, his son is a spinal surgeon, and years ago I had the opportunity to go to his wedding, and all of his friends were doctors from all over Russia. There was like 7 or 8 of them, and I talked to all of them. Some spoke English really well, some spoke non-English, and we talked. They were all they all kidded that one guy was a dermatologist, and they told him he wasn't a doctor, just for fun, just 'cause it was a complicated thing. But we're talking spinal surgeon. There's an orthopedic surgeon. There's an ER doctor. I mean, one was a children's doctor. But one was a cancer doctor. These were, I mean, very educated people, and none of them made more than 40,000 equivalent U.S. dollars a year. None of them. Now, they all lived in, I wouldn't say smaller cities. I mean, a couple of them lived in, or 1 million people in the city, so it's not like small, but it wasn't Moscow or St. Petersburg. Um, and as I said before, the hospital I went to was a government hospital, but also had you could private pay. There are private only pay hospitals and surgical floors and places that you can go and pay. And Moscow has a ton of them. St. Petersburg has them. Those doctors can make a lot of money. They're still not going to make American a lot of money. And when I mean American a lot of money, I'm not trying to say that they'll make what Americans make. No, that's just the difference between an average in Russian salary and an average surgical salary. That disparity is tiny compared to the disparity in the U.S. So I'm not trying to compare what a doctor makes in Russia to what a doctor makes in the U.S. I'm trying to compare what a doctor makes in each country is equivalent to a school teacher or a bus driver. things like that. So that's what I'm talking about. So if you're a doctor in a private hospital in Moscow, you'll be able to have a BMW, Mercedes, a much nicer apartment. I mean, you'll make more money. The things that some people some people won't afford ever in their life, but you're not gonna be able to afford, a $7,000 house, a house on the beach of some ocean, uh, all these expensive things that we know the doctors in the U.S. The big doctors have in the U.S. Uh, there are some differences as for how they become a doctor. It's still the same amount of school. Of course, it's free or next to nothing in Russia. It does cost some, but it's not that much. No one's going to graduate with huge student loans. So there's a difference there. But I hear all these doctors, oh, it cost me $200,000 to $300,000 of my student loans, and I kind of laugh at that. So you have $300,000 student loans, and yes, it's probably hard when you're in residency and all that. When you're making 30 to 50,000, I get that. But at some point, they're making $150 to $300,000 a year. You can afford a $300,000 loan. I know a lot of my attorney friends graduate with $100 to $200,000 loans, and they're making 50, 60,000 as they start an attorney to do it. I had $78,000 worth of student loans, and yeah, it took me forever to pay it off, but I paid $500 a month. Well, I made much more than $500 a month because I went to law school. And of course, it's not all about money. When people didn't go to school at all to make as much money as me as an attorney. But nonetheless, what my point is they don't have student loans like they do in the U.S. But regular doctors in the U.S., I do think it's proportional a lot of money for student loans, but especially not your surgeons and your specialties. They make a lot of money. Anesthesiologists, of course, insurance is crazy, which is my next topic. Uh, the doctors in Russia don't have insurance. I mean, they not that I'm aware of, and if they do have some medical professional insurance, I don't think it's cost that much because no one's going to sue a doctor for a mistake unless they were criminally negligent. And I may be wrong on this. It's not my expertise here at all, but it's not the same. Which brings me into uh, another point, is how doctors are, how they practice medicine. So we all know we go to the doctor, and if you're overweight, the first thing doctor's going to say, you need to lose weight. If you're smoking, you need to quit smoking. You're drinking too much, you're drinking too much. They're going to tell you that, right? But how many times have you went in to a doctor and they say, you need to go get these tests, and you go get those tests? Let's just use the obvious one. You go for an ultrasound or an MRT. Um, I've had several of those. So you go in, you get it done, and they don't tell you anything. You ask, is everything okay? You got to talk to your doctor. And they tell you nothing. So you leave, and then you make an appointment for your doctor, or your doctor calls you when they have the material. Now, my legal profession, I've done some legal work for some of these radiology doctors, and I know how it works now. And you go to the technician, uh, and they do uh, they'll do either the ultrasound or, now, of course, when you're having a baby, sometimes those ultrasounds are a little different. Um, or you got you have an MRT, and they have, sorry, I keep saying MRT, MRI. MRT is what it is in Russia, MRI. So you go, you have your MRI. Now, what happens is that data gets sent to a doctor, and that doctor reads the MRI and does its medical diagnosis, sends that diagnosis to your doctor. Your doctor sets up an appointment and reviews it and meets with you and tells you about it. And I know most of those doctors just sit around Hawaii, California, wherever they are, and they just review those. That's why I used to work for those one of those companies. And you don't know who this doctor is. You have no idea. You know nothing. You can't ask questions. You get to wait and ask your doctor questions. So, of course, later you set up an appointment and you talk to your doctor. And even then, your doctor is... my experience with medical professionals in the U.S., they don't tell you everything. I don't know if they don't tell you everything because they either think you're stupid, which most doctors do think you're stupid, or they're afraid to tell you everything. They don't want to be sued. They don't want to get in any trouble for misdiagnosing you, not diagnosing you. Um, who knows? And that's part of my legal profession. Suing so many doctors getting sued sometimes for stupid stuff is really part of the problem. But I just think they're afraid to tell you things. So, for example, I had an attack of my gallbladder almost 20 years ago. Was in the ER. I had to go to the ER the day after Thanksgiving, and my ex brother-in-law, the cardiothoracic surgeon, we went to his hospital. It was funny. He dropped me off in front, and he went around back, and the doctor was like shaking when she took care of me because of the surgeon was there. But long story short, I had dust on my gallbladder, and it got infected and was rubbing on my liver. So I had hepatitis, it was jaundice. It was bad. And then I followed up with a doctor in the U.S. Could tell me nothing, and did a liver biopsy. Fine. So I just went years with everybody tell me I'm fine. You're fine. Okay. Just you had gallstone dust. That was it. 5 years later, I had to go to the ER. Thought I was having a heart attack, and it was a gallbladder attack again. No, you're fine. Followed up with the doctor. You're fine. No one tell me anything. And then now I'm married to my wife, and we go to Ulianos, do an ultrasound, and the doctor says, "You eat too many cheeseburgers." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "You have a fatty liver." I didn't know what that meant. This was a while back, about 15 years ago. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like 25% of Americans have fatty livers. And mine wasn't from alcohol. I didn't drink until I was in my 30s. I had, 3 kids and a wife. I guess that's reason not to start drinking. But mine was just from bad food diet. And I'm like, okay. And he said everything else is fine. Okay. The next year, so I started getting this done every time I would come to Russia. I had an MRI done, and everything looked fine. And then I came back for another ultrasound, and this time I was, just worried, and I gained weight, just being a fat guy. And he said my pancreas was a little not working, and I was like, well, what's that mean? And basically pre-diabetic, not diabetic, but part of it. I guess when the ultrasound, it's just like shaded. It's just like not all of it. Just struggling, I guess, overworking it. Not a doctor. Nonetheless, he was telling me while he was scanning my stomach, this, and that, blah, 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 blah. And the same with the MRI. So this is how it works here, both places. So you go and you have your MRI done. You're sitting in there forever. Hate the MRI. They don't have open MRIs. Well, at least the ones I went to was the closed MRIs, and I just don't like them. So you do the MRI, and then you put your clothes back on. The doctor is there with the technician. They type up everything. It's like 2 pages, single space. They type up your diagnosis and talk with you about it right then and there. They'll have a seat, let's talk. And then they tell you everything, and they're fine. And you leave not only with the diagnosis, you leave with the film. Now, I understand some of the reasons why. It's because they don't have the same, at least not yet, they don't have the same shared file medical system that every doctor in the country shares with. They don't have any centralized database, at least not yet. So it was like my old military days when you go, you carry all of your medical documents from your life with you everywhere, because they don't know what your past exams were. You have to have everything there if you want the doctor to have a medical history. Rest is similar. So ultrasound, same thing. I've had several in the last 6 months, and do the ultrasound, and the doctor literally sits there and types it up real quick and has a conversation with you about all of it. Tells you every single thing that they believe is wrong, and you take it with you. Now, of course, you still go meet your doctor, but leaving there, if you have an ultrasound and they find cancer in your stomach, or an MRI and they find cancer in U.S., they don't tell you that. They tell you nothing. You need to talk to your doctor. You need to talk to your doctor. Why? I just don't understand it. Why? And of course, they don't want to get sued, I think, is the number one reason they don't want to get sued. But the doctors in Russia are just more hands-on. I'm sure other countries as well. I'm only comparing this to my experience in the U.S. You know how they tap you all those kind of things. Last time a doctor tapped me or anything like that, you know what I mean? They're like, they just don't do any of that stuff anymore. And here in Russia, every doctor that came to me did that. Anesthesiologist, the surgeon, my regular, like they all come and tap, listen, tap, listen, tap, listen. I don't, I'm sure it's some basic stuff, but it's what they do. So there's just a vast difference in how they practice. The why I think is significant. So back to that, I know I ramble. So back to that, the none of the doctors that I met with at the wedding made over 40,000 US. Well, the one doctor, spinal surgeon, did not make enough money to buy a new car. He had bought an old junky Lada and it cost too much to keep up, so he eventually sold it. The man takes a bus to work. And that's just amazing. You imagine all the time, forget the money, but imagine all the hours, the work it takes to be a doctor, go through med school, go through your residency, become a surgeon, go through surgical residency, become a spinal surgeon, go through the spinal surgeon residency, all of this stuff, and don't even make enough money to buy a car. That's just amazing. Now, I think he could afford to buy a car. He just has other priorities because it's such an expensive item. And they're not poor by any means. He lives a very, very nice lifestyle. It's just, and he may make enough now. It's been a couple of years. He may make enough now to have a car, but he didn't have a car. Now, one of his other doctor friends has got a really nice BMW. He's got a nice motorcycle, but he's also single. I don't think he has children. But nonetheless, there's a nicer lifestyle. And I don't know if he works in private practice or not, but none of them are wealthy. None of them. They don't live a lifestyle any nicer than a school teacher does in the U.S. And they make more than a school teacher in Russia, but not crazy amount more. And it's just amazing to me. Amazing. Now, these days, more and more people are having cars, no matter what their salary are in Russia. Just people are buying into the getting loans for cars and things like that. And things are slowly changing, but they don't become a doctor to be rich. There's prestige, of course, but they become a doctor just because they want to take care of people. It's just blatantly obvious the difference. It's just you can just see it. So I believe you can see the difference in the care that's taken as well. Like a lot of good nurses become nurses not because they want to get rich. They make good money, but they're not going to get rich. It's the same. In fact, I would probably compare that. Most doctors in Russia probably make the same standard of living that a nurse does in the U.S. I'm not comparing dollar to dollar. I'm just comparing their level of income compared to other professions in the U.S. A doctor is probably at that level, but even a surgeon. So back to my experience. The only other experience that was strange for me, was a side note, was so the lady would come down the hall with us a cart full of food, and the first day was like pour a lot of oatmeal, buckwheat. Most Americans never even seen buckwheat, but buckwheat, porridge, oatmeal, different types of kasha, cream of wheat, that kind of stuff. And then lunch was soup and a piece of bread, and then dinner would be like a meatball and maybe some pasta, some kind of bland food, which is fine. But she would hand me all that stuff, and then I would know what to do with the plates and stuff. So I washed it in my room and left it on a table. And I'm like, and the next person came and she gave me more plates, and then needed a cup, and in my closet I had silverware and stuff in there, so I'd use my own silverware and wash it each time, which is just so weird to think in a hospital. And I asked my wife, I said, that's kind of weird. She goes, you're supposed to take the dirty silverware out in the hallway. There's somewhere to go. Well, I didn't see anything. I was just in my room. I never really went outside. And then I asked the woman where, and she pointed to it was all the way down the other hall with just a cart to put your dirty dishes on. I'm like, well, no one told me that. But the silverware you had to wash in the sink. You had to wash yourself. Very weird. That to me was weird. But you kind of got to take care of your own self in the hospital. I mean, they'll come check your vital signs and stuff, but it's not quite the same. It's almost like you're hanging out in a dormitory where the doctor comes by and checks on you. It's pretty much what it is. You got to go to the bathroom, you go out in the hallway and go to the bathroom. Of course, I didn't. I had my own suite, but that's how it was. Zero privacy. There's no curtains in between each of those 6 beds. It's a room full of guys. Um, so I was very happy to have my own room. I will always do biz party. I will always pay. It's much easier. So that's my medical experience in Russia. Um, it's only been a week and a half since my surgery, and I'm fine. Uh, I'm staying in Russia a little longer to make sure everything's fine. I have some paperwork I have to do for some something else that I've been doing. Uh, it's changing they misspelled my name, so I had 3 different ways over the last 5 years. So everything's got my name spelled different. So I've changed almost everything except for one more item, and I'm waiting for that document to go check it out. And that's a whole nother video I could do that I could talk about. And people can argue that the Russian medical system is subpar to the U.S. That's fine, but I can tell you there's some other things that I do like how the Russian government does documents and things. It's quite amazing. Um, Maybe I'll make another video of that. Very interesting. From an attorney, it's very interesting to see it. And they're changing things here in Russia. It's changed over the last 5 years. Changed since I first got here, doing legal documents, and to where how it's being done now, and it's for the better. And it's, to me, it's slow. There's nothing speedy about it. You need some time. You got to go places, and I've learned one thing in Russia: you can never just go somewhere, get something done, and go home. It's always another visit. Don't know why. And it's not like corruption, like you think. It's nothing like that. They're rapidly changing things here. Um, People would say they're really behind the Western society, but some of the things they do here are way better. The way that you can do documents, and I'll do another video about that. So that's my very long story today on my removing my gallbladder. So until next time, see ya. До свидания. Any questions? Ask.